Hi everyone, this is Perfume Coast, so welcome to my channel. Today's podcast is dedicated to the new line of Kayali Freedom. So without further ado, let's jump into the ocean of perfumes. So in my previous podcast, I've made a glimpse into a new Kayali Musk line Freedom, and just next day the whole line got available in the shops, so obviously I instantly bought a discovery set. And so I've been testing new Kayali Freedom line for the past few days, having this full body wear experience. And the results are somewhat interesting. Some of the perfumes met my expectations, some didn't, and some exceeded ones. But the first fragrance I'm going to talk about is called Musk Matcha, and now Fragrantica has full availability of notes, so let's have a dive into the notes of this one. So on the top we've got matcha tea, mate, bergamot and green apple. In the middle there's oat, milk, vanilla, praline and coffee. And finally in the base there's musk, sandalwood, amber, patchouli and vetiver. So this one exceeded my expectations for sure, skyrocketing its value for me big time. My expectations were, let's say, cautiously optimistic, just because of presence of matcha tea accord, which, according to my previous experience, may come across as a bit of a fish product. So again, my expectations were very modest. So imagine my surprise when the first spray gave me this most delicious and photorealistic gourmand territory. It starts off extremely nutty, touch sweet, creamy and a bit powdery. The combination of all this gives me a distinct impression of somewhat nutty dessert, the likes of baklava or hazelnut cakes or hazelnut ice cream perhaps. I think I specifically smell sweet roasted hazelnut. As compared to other nuts such as walnut for example, this one is always lacking this bitter undertone, which in its turn highlights sweet creamy gourmand bed. Perhaps the goal was not so much to depict matcha tea as such, but rather a baklava-like dessert it goes along with. So the biggest pleasant surprise of mine as far as this line is concerned. It's a real pity though that so far this release is released in 10ml format only. The good news though is that Monica Tan did mention that depending on the sales, she might consider introducing other formats to successful contenders. So I'm hopeful that that's exactly what's going to happen with this fragrance. The unique quality also is that closer to a dry down, this scent acquires a bit of citrusy dimension, which is interesting because citrus accord is normally a starting point and quite a fleeting one. So this release is a big recommendation to say the least. But next up we've got Musk Santal, and let's dive into the notes of this one. So according to Fragrantica, what we're dealing here on the top with would be bergamot, pink pepper and mandarin. In the middle we've got freesia, lily and lavender. And finally in the base there's sandalwood, musk, amber and vetiver. So as far as this fragrance is concerned, this one retains on par my expectations. I anticipated this woody, slightly gourmand scent, and that's exactly what I got. I will say though straight away that it's very similar to my beloved Kayali wedding scent Santal, that was of course Monica Tan's own wedding scent that she kindly shared with the world. But the opening on the other hand reminds me of another perfume, specifically Parfums de Marly Valaya and also Valaya Exclusif, which I just love. So the opening is fresh and somewhat citrusy, which is where a major difference from wedding scent Santal is. That one is straight vanilla forward in the opening. But back to this one, this, fresh citrusy opening in next few minutes settles a bit, converting itself to this crystal-like, elegant, a bit sweet Valaya-like territory. And so it remains till the very dry down, where the scent acquires this vanilla woody quality and eventually also gets this slightly powdery, almost touch smoky wood quality, becoming this beautiful iteration of silk wedding Santal. I would go as far as saying that it could have easily been flanker of wedding scent Santal, but I'm quite content with the way it is, being a separate release, of course. This one is definitely a full bottle worthy, even if you already have both of them, wedding scent Santal and Valaya, because this release sort of glues these two together at the same time providing its most unique qualities. By the way, wedding scent Santal, at least in Europe, is sold only in 50ml format, while this one, as mentioned in my previous podcast, is the only scent in this line that's on offer in 3 sizes, including 100 ml, and that's exactly the size I'm aiming for. So a beautiful, woody, slightly fruity fragrance with a gourmand touch, very elegant and also upscale, if you will. Next up, however, is next release, which is called Musk Latte, and let's have a quick look at the notes that this one is having. So according to Fragrantica, on the top we've got cinnamon, bergamot, mandarin and pink pepper. In the middle there's coffee latte, lavender, cypriol and Turkish rose. And finally in the base there's chocolate, sandalwood, musk and cedarwood. So this perfume is an interesting one that surprised me as well, and I tend to think that in a good way so. I'm a bit hesitant because my initial expectations were to get this distinct gourmand lactonic and sweet coffee, the likes of Amore Café by Mancera perhaps. And this scent does deliver lactonic coffee all right, but not in the way that I expected, and not right away also. Which doesn't take away, however, from the genius that this scent is. First of all, this scent has zero sweetness, an important message to those who love their sweet coffee. It opens extremely cold and with something green, almost conifer-like, piney, and then, in a few seconds really, for some reason, my brain starts interpreting this cold conifer-like effect as cold milk accord, especially in the air. So this scent starts to be extremely lactonic, but lactonic cold with no sweetness. And as the scent develops on skin, it acquires this coffee-like touch, but a touch really. So the imagery that this one is giving to me is this unsweetened latte with a big dollop of equally non-sweet whipped cream. If I smell my hand up close, this fragrance still retains its green pine note, especially if I think of it. But the overall imagery, especially as far as the scent trail is concerned, is exactly the imagery of non-sweet latte. But for this reason, I think this scent is straight away unisex, and as far as I'm concerned, no, that's not exactly the latte I expected, but it certainly comes as another pleasant surprise, delivering this unique and different proposition to other run-of-the-mill coffee-forward releases. It certainly gets on my wish list, especially after it gets released in full size, hopefully. And last fragrance for today's review is called Musk Bouquet. So very quickly, let's have a look at the notes that this one is having. So on the top, we've got jasmine, ylang-ylang, solar notes, and also pink pepper. In the middle, we've got musk, Turkish rose, and vanilla. And finally, in the base, there's sandalwood, praline, and vetiver. So this one is probably the only one in the line that doesn't quite do it for me. And as expected, it's largely due to the presence of, ylang-ylang among the notes. While to many of you, it serves as amplifier of banana-like fruitiness, to me it normally gives something different. It gives me a bit of kernel quality, quite rancid to my nose. And unfortunately, this happens here to me as well. So first spray in this gorgeous citrusy fruity opening that's very solar and a bit beachy even. And initially, ylang-ylang doesn't stand out on its own. But then eventually my stupid nose starts detecting this almost pea-like quality that spoils it all and takes away from initial gorgeousness, obviously. I'm almost trying to convince myself that what it is this honey-like quality rather, and it makes sense for a bit. And I'm smelling this floral, slightly citrusy, very sweet, golden, gooey honey, but every time I need to force this train of thought on me, which is quite hard. And fragrances are probably one of not many walks of life that shouldn't be hard. So probably by the time this one is released in full bottle, my nose will probably be more trained as far as ylang-ylang is concerned. On the other hand, those of you who love their ylang-ylang fragrances, please know that this one is a very natural and realistic ylang-ylang. I can literally smell high quality of materials in here, which is another, prominent thing about Kayali fragrances I've ever smelled. Which is another, in its turn, commercial wonder to me, specifically how Kayali ever manages to sustain such high quality of materials, along with high-end artistic creativity, providing such affordable prices, when prices for natural ingredients are growing now more than ever. But that's it, guys. This wraps up today's podcast. I hope it was helpful. If so, please give this podcast a like. Please consider subscribing and sharing your comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.